I thought that we could divide just like the next hour into half of it talking about like making the case for your work, so writing about artist statements and just kind of getting over writer's block. I think that's like the biggest one. So that's the sheet that says making the case for your work, and then have a little break for questions, and then go into just talking about particular projects. So I was really thinking about like the grants funding climate, and just kind of how to write like project proposals, but we can also talk about just kind of pitching to media a little bit. And then since we have an hour, I will also give everyone my contact information so we can kind of continue the conversation with just whatever comes up today. This is really meant to be an intro and just like a way to start your writing process, and is not comprehensive. So yeah. Good. Great. Someone's taking photos over there. So everyone look natural. So I thought we could just talk about like the difference between creative statements and bios. So, you know, it's a general introduction to your work, body of work, or specific project. It's not a biography, and it speaks to the viewer in your absence. So really thinking about writing the statement from a first-person point of view and in concise conversational language, I think that is kind of where a lot of artists have trouble, because I think, you know, if you read publications, the writing is so jargon filled, and I think that the best writing is really clear and easy to understand, and especially I think with the topics that we all are working with, you know, because the content is so, like there's so many technical terms like involved with some of your projects that everything else you write has to be really easy to understand. So it's a way to highlight, you know, your relationship with your practice, and it's not really about how the viewer should interpret your work, but really how you think about it. So this whole, you know, creative statement is like centered on you and like your work. So and it's not meant to be egotistical, but I think just it's easier to think about kind of thinking about your relationship rather than trying to please the audience and the viewer that you're into. So when I think about like the length of statement, I generally recommend that everyone have like a full page statement that speaks generally about your work, methods used, etc. A short statement that includes the above in an abbreviated way, and then a project statement, so which we're going to talk about next. And I think about the writing process in 3 parts. So I'm a procrastinator, so that's why this helps me kind of get over that. So pre-writing questions, and then just kind of like during the writing process, or the draft process, and then post-writing to just kind of like compare and contrast with what you set out to do. So thinking about why are you writing the statement, who's going to read it, what assumptions are you making about the reader's existing knowledge. I think that also has a lot to do with like the pitching process and also the grant writing process. It's kind of like when you think, you know, they already know, but do you have to explain to them? Where is this going to live? I think thinking about, you know, like physical grants that you have to submit versus your website versus your Twitter bio versus, you know, all of these like social media channels where you have to write about yourself in a concise way. So really thinking about just like who's going to read it, how available is it, how personal do you want to be? I think this is also where I would say think about what your limits are and your boundaries about your own like privacy and kind of personal relationship to your work. So what do you want to share with others, and what do you want to keep to yourself? You know, it's such a personal part. And then what do you want the statement to say about you and your work? And then what is the desired takeaway from the statement? I think this part is what I would encourage everyone to think about most, because when you are submitting any writing, or even about your artist statement in an exhibition space, on a website, or just like an exterior place, that person, anyone who's reading it, is reading, you know, what is it, we're with like 3,000 images a day. I'm sure the number of articles we get is so much more, so they're not going to remember everything you write, even though you labored over it for so long. I think it's really important to remember, you know, just kind of like what are the key points, and maybe what is like the key point you want them to remember. So what to include while writing? So thinking about the depending on one's statement, the number of sentences is going to vary, and I really think about like artist statements in like percentages and quarters. So the first quarter, thinking about an overview, showcasing the basic ideas of your work, the value of your specific project, don't include details. The second one is like specific details that show how like the broad ideas are represented in your work. This can also include the how, if you want to mention like special processes and or unusual materials, depending on what you're thinking about. The third quarter is really where you get deep into it, so it's like the why behind your work, and that's like feelings, influences, motivation, etc. And then the last quarter is like summarizing the most important points in each statement and honing in on the takeaway. So that's your first draft, and you want to like step away from it because you just, I think even with that, the reason I think about it in ratios and quarters is because you can do the first part and then take a break, etc. And this is also where I'll direct you guys to the second sheet, so developing artist statements and artist bios. So this I actually pulled from Monica's career development website. So I would also encourage everyone to look online at, I mean, it doesn't even have to be, I think, MFA or BFA focused. I mean, especially with the projects that, you're working on here, it's like just looking at resources that are already out there. And what I like about this one actually is, I think the general kind of advice is great, but the 10-minute writing exercises, so I actually have a kitchen timer and I set it for 10 minutes and then I do some of these questions. So I think that is a good way to just get your motivation started and just get some words down, because I think that is also like where we stop ourselves from doing something. So yeah, there are general guidelines here, but I think just trying that exercise and getting over writer's block is helpful. The other thing that I like is that on the second page there is a section experiencing writer's block, and so the one I like a lot here is like, inviting friends over for a studio visit. So, and then while you're having a conversation about your work, record what you're saying, and then listening to the conversation later, and then choosing the best excerpts. So you can think about what you are saying, but also what the feedback your friends are giving. And I think that is also helpful, like kind of figuring out what other folks are picking up that you're not. And I think recording is actually a really cool way to just get your ideas out there because it's not writing. So if you start there. And then, yeah, so, ways to get over the writer's block, and then post-writing questions. So, you take a little break. I also, just a general rule, I think this is a really good exercise to do when you don't have something to do. So I think this is something that maybe, like, during the holidays, it sounds terrible and you want to be with your families, but if you have like, an hour or something to yourself and there are no deadlines in sight, I think that's also kind of a nice time to do this where it's like, it's clear-headed, you're not really thinking about an end result or, achieving or attaining something. So helpful to do that. And then you're prepared for when applications are due like that. So post-writing questions. So does your statement achieve the goals listed during your pre-writing phase? Is it free of grammatical errors and typos? This is also where I think everyone here is so lucky that you have a community at Eyebeam to help you out. So everyone who's here, if you pick someone to reach out to, or if you give folks enough notice, I would say like if you give someone a week to look over something, and of course we all have those friends who's like, I'll look it over in 24 hours, or in an hour, or on GChat or something, but generally, if you want to reach out to someone who you know a little less well, I would say a week is really nice, and they can help you with those grammatical errors and typos. And then thinking about formatting, so depending on where you're applying or what you have to send, is it technical fonts, single space, etc., does it meet the requirements of your audience? So this is also where you kind of do, I guess, like thinking about from their point of view, even though you're talking about yourself and centering your relationship to the work, it's like, are you making too many assumptions about their background knowledge? Are you explaining too much that folks said that they already know? That's kind of like about it. And then does it read as professional and objective even with the first person narrative? So first person narrative does not have to always, every sentence doesn't have to start with I. I think, it's difficult, but I think there are ways to do it even without just kind of like, 5 sentences starting that way. So just thinking about how does it read. And then final word. So I really like this quotation that I found. I don't know this woman, Ariane Goodwin, and the rest of her website didn't seem too appealing, but this quotation was helpful. So she writes, "There is an unself-conscious language about your work which you use all the time. Every time you talk or think about your work, you experience relationship between words and your art. The trick is to learn how to catch yourself doing this and then faithfully writing it down." So that's kind of Oh, great. So that's, I think, just like the starting the writing process, and I think it's helpful to start with your homework before thinking about other people. Does anybody have any questions? All right, yeah.
So my name is Julia, actually from the Chinatown Brigade. Sorry about everybody. This is very helpful for my personal work. I was just wondering if you have any advice for the
Yeah. So I think
it's always very
so like starting with the conversation about how you all talk to each other about the work that you do, and then taking that and maybe everyone, kind of working on their own to write, like, I would say like it's easier to, start with a lot of content and then edit it down. So if you have a collective and you feel like there's a core collective that's equally part of it, in terms of like, there's some collectives that are super large and then there's like 4 members of it, and others that I think are just like on a smaller scale. So I would say you start with the recording, hear how everyone's talking about the work, and then maybe separate, write your own thoughts down and write what you thought was like the most important, and then come back together and see just kind of like what the takeaways were. I think that would be interesting because you're basically working with the same content, but everyone's pulling out different things. And I also think this is where Google Docs is like very helpful, because you can, on Google Docs, you can basically, everyone can edit at the same time and make comments. So I think that is probably like the best way to start pitching it. And if you start from a collective place where it's like you're all working from, I don't know, it's like the same amount of information, then I think it'll be a little more inclusive and cool for each member. But yeah, it's an interesting place. Do you feel like everyone has an equal voice in the collective?
Well, yeah, I guess we try to be as democratic as possible. I wind up doing a lot of writing, so
Yeah.
it's helpful to get advice.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is maybe when you are doing the recording or the transcription, it might feel a little uncomfortable, but if everyone can say their name and then say the statement, so that at least if you are the one who has to do the writing at the end, it's like you can kind of keep in mind whose words belong to who, so that the final statement, you feel like everyone's voice is heard. So it's like, I think sometimes we, if 3 parts are from one person, and then, it's like, I think there are ways to think about how everyone would make their space known. I don't know if that's helpful.
I think right now we're struggling with these issues of being anonymous.
Yeah.
And trying to understand how we each bring our own work into this process. But because it's a different entity, we're just trying to understand how one person does it to people.
Definitely. Have you, the Yellow Jackets collective? they have a great statement that they all wrote together. And maybe talking to them about their process would be helpful. And if you want to contact, you can check in. But they have a great statement. Yeah, and it feels very democratic because they don't mention. I mean, not that you don't have to mention, but if you want to stay anonymous, and then each, you know, I guess like they had these mandates that they had, and then there's kind of like a recent slide. So, yeah, but we can. Any other questions? Everyone's good? Okay. I get nervous when people don't talk because I'm like, oh, maybe I'm just really fucking up over here. You know, it's like that's just silent signals to me. So,
Well,
hi.
Hi. So, writing online is the academic and arts writing.
Yes,
And making the academics understand.
totally.
Right? So, big money, like, so I'm going to apply now for readings,
Yeah,
and that's usually academic.
yeah.
But my language isn't academic.
I think it's so much better that your language is an academic. Do you feel like it's a
Oh, it's a hindrance because
Really?
I can't even get out of my school. They don't get it at all.
really?
Yeah.
Okay, we should talk about that because I think academic writing has its own problems, but I think academic writing has similar problems to the art writing world, where it's like jargon and a lot of fluff.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's a lot of fluff. Just like, you know, I mean, I don't think, a lot of people are definitely not through art forum moving forward, but I think even when folks were subscribing to art forum, like the articles of themselves are not, you know, they're not easy to read a lot of the time. They're very jargon filled, and I don't think that's appealing to creating like more inclusive article, or just like content. So I guess with academics, I mean, do you have like a particular problem in mind that you're thinking about?
Yeah, I think the language doesn't match at all with their totally different structures.
Yeah.
So I have a hard time. And of course, I'm an artist doing crazy things. So I have a really difficult time just reminding myself for them. And then,
Yeah.
because there's really a thing. I don't have a PhD, so that's not like there are all these barriers.
Yeah. We should, maybe afterwards we can talk specifically because I'm thinking about some exhibitions that have happened at the new school and some of the folks that work on organizing those that maybe could talk to you about things like that process. Thank you all for coming. So we actually, we just went through these two worksheets, just like making the case for your work, and then the second one is pulled straight from Micah's career development office. And so the ones that I were highlighting was just like the 10-minute writing exercises. And on the second page, there's like a writer's block section. But we can chat. I have to head out today, but maybe afterwards, like we can all chat about that later. So the second half that I was thinking about was, you know, that I think originally thinking about was like pitching your project. So you all are residents here, so you've already successfully pitched and you know gotten residencies here. But in terms of other places that you might want funding, or and you can talk a little bit about media, even though it's not on the sheet. I thought we could talk a little bit about the grants and funding climate, and then like project description outlines, and then kind of some helpful tips. So for grants and just kind of like the current funding climate, so there are three types of kind of like grant organizations. So it's corporations, private foundations, and government support. So corporations, their timelines are super wonky and not always following like strict deadlines. So I think that's a long-term process and maybe not as viable if you need kind of immediate assistance or you have a timeline in mind. So really thinking we're focusing on private foundations and government support as viable sources. So grants are often ordered based on disciplines, so performance, video, music, fine art, and other, you know, there are other examples there. So thinking about kind of where your
project might fit in. And even if it fits into multiple disciplines, I think there are ways to talk about that. So just kind of thinking about, like, we don't like to think about our work fitting into checkboxes, but I think for grant purposes, trying to fit it, trying to think about like what the tags might be. So helpful resources for finding grants, like the Foundation Directory, GrantSpace, and NYFA. This is on a Google Doc, so there are links involved that I can send later. And then thinking about funders in the tri-state area. So some of the bigger ones are Creative Capital, Foundation for Contemporary Art, Open Society Foundation, Blade Grass, the NEA, and then also your local arts council. So think about where you're located, where your studio is located, and just kind of the local organizations there that might be able to help you out. Program officers are there to help you before, during, and after the application process. So before and during, definitely take advantage of the contact that you have at the organization. They are there to, really help you do the best that you can. So, and then even afterwards, if you don't get the grant, for example, emailing them and asking for advice about, what to do next year or what could have been improved, or just kind of like what are the areas that, maybe they can help you out with in the next year. So I was just talking about this earlier this morning, but if an organization reaches out to you in Q4, which is October, November, December, to pitch a project, it probably means, I couldn't put this on paper, but it almost most definitely means that they have money that they need to give away, or else they'll lose it. So your chances to receive funding are higher in this scenario, and you should always submit something. So I have a friend who works at the Ford Foundation, and she was basically like, submit anything, even if it doesn't fit exactly, it's like, even if it's a long-term project, or just like, it's better to put something out there rather than like lose the opportunity. And so, yeah, so just right now is the time. It's November, people are trying to get rid of their funds, so reach out to your contacts, and even maybe reaching out to your friends, across the board and saying, do you know any organizations, do you have funds available, like what can you do? So for most applications, you'll have to assemble an artist statement, which we talked about, the project description, project timeline, budget, and work samples. So thinking about those elements. So we're going to talk about the project description, and then the other one is about artist statements, and then hopefully that helps you out. I'm really trying to work on this, but my advice for this process is don't let perfection be the enemy of the good. So I think I really struggle with this, where I will put something off or not submit something because I'm just like so afraid that it's not good enough, and always good enough. You just have to kind of let go of it a little bit. So the project description outline versus the artist statement, I would say this is just, now you're kind of decentering yourself and thinking more about what the organization is looking for, and just kind of like what their requirements are. So, the length is going to vary depending on the word limit, but again, you can use long ratios for it. And you're really thinking about, so this is the helpful tips, but pitching your ability to do the project. So what I like to do for my own job applications, or just kind of any application, is I like to print out the requirements and the facts for the grant application, and then highlight the key points to make sure you meet each of them during your proposal. So if if they are looking for like a 6-month project, then you want to make sure that you're hitting all 6 months. I think those, they're not simple, but I guess sometimes like an incredible project will be submitted, but because they missed one requirement, it doesn't even move past the first round. So I think just making sure we avoid like taking yourself out of the running even before you get a chance to kind of like be up for it is helpful. So describing the proposed project, title of work, media, length, genre, in both present and active tense. So present and active tense is the way to go for projects. Don't say will be or would be, just say that it's happening, and pretend like, whether they give you funding or not, it's going to continue. And then the second part, I would say include a couple of sentences. So in total, there are 8 parts. So I would say think about your project proposal in 8 parts. So include a couple sentences that encompass like the main question, topics of your piece, define the parameters of the project. So in terms of parameters, I think it's helpful to create interest and also show it has boundaries so that they feel like this is doable in that time frame. And so these are two examples. Again, the School of the Art Institute of Chicago on their career development website. I thought this was a little cheesy but helpful. So the first one is, I plan to do a feature film starring people I meet on the street in all the neighborhoods of Chicago. This piece will be about how we can all live on this planet. So, that versus I plan to create a triptych of 3 10-minute films, which will rework the same narrative using 3 different sets of actors in 3 different locations in Chicago. In this work, I will question ways that we view conflict with regards to ethnicity and urban location. So, I think we can kind of, maybe we want to talk about just like why one might be more appealing to a funder than the other. I think we all agree, right? Like, I think we all know which one is, doing a little better there. So, and it's not that the first one, it's like a good effort, but the more detail you have, the more concrete it feels for everyone involved. So then the third part, you can start diving into the narrative, where you can start including less concrete aspects of your project. And then you can discuss the main themes that the work addresses outside of itself. So, maybe you want to talk about the roots of the work, just where it's like beginning, or the issues in the world like that your project touches upon. So we were talking about cryptocurrency, right? Like your project. So right now that is like such a topic in like multiple sectors. So I think thinking about how that touches like mainstream media, or even what we're talking about like business school, I think just like thinking about how your project is relevant to, like your environment, your community, but also just how it touches on like current events is really helpful to think about. So then details of the project, so it's like thinking about the material elements of the work, technique, equipment, processes, etc. And then, so this I read, which I thought was helpful. It's important that the funders can visualize this work coming to fruition, so be specific on the availability of your tools. So if you're thinking about filming something in another country, and so I'm from Bangladesh, so we'll use that. So if I'm like, I want to make a film in Bangladesh, and no one knows that I have any connections to Bangladesh, I don't know how to get a visa, you know what I mean? Like, I think all of those elements, it's like if I can say, oh, like, I want to make a film in Bangladesh between November 15th and February 8th during the Dhaka Art Summit, and I'm going to do this by getting in contact with X curator and YZ funders, etc. I think that makes it more real for them, so that's helpful. And then thinking about the present state of the work. So even if it's a proposal where the project hasn't started it yet, you're clearly thinking about it, and there's research there. So how are the funders going to be, how can they be a piece of a work that has a public life, and how are they, it's like you have to subtly prove that this project will happen whether or not they give you the money, but their funding and their support will be integral in making it happen. I think that's helpful. And then this is interesting. I think sometimes in applications we're told to show only the positives, only the best parts of ourselves, and kind of like showing off without showing any of improvements, negative. I don't even think that these things as negative, but I think it's helpful to show how a project is going to improve on obstacles, challenges, and problems you faced in previous work. So how will this next step build upon your existing foundation? So maybe your project wants to, I'm trying to give you an example that's not film related, but if there's like equipment that you want to use that would have helped in a previous project, you can mention that. If you sampled 5 people for a previous interview project, and you realize you wanted a wider range of voices in your project, that's also helpful. If you want to be able to go to different neighborhoods, so maybe your all of your projects have been in one particular area of like Queens, so like Flushing, and then you want to expand to other parts of your city. So it's just helpful to think about that and include it. I think people want to see that. And then the closing statement. So ending with the hopeful goal for your work, addressing the present tense, and where you hope this project will live. So I think whenever someone's providing support for a project, they want to make sure that it's not just going to be kind of a private entity that isn't shared. Unfortunately, with funding, it's not really, they're not funding you out of the pure goodness of their heart, right? It's like they want something out of it, so you kind of have to show them like how public this will be, and kind of like who will it touch outside of yourself. So helpful tips. So we talked about thinking about requirements, identifying your audience, so thinking about who you're writing for and like what they value, and then also just like throughout using active voice and avoiding like future tense, passive voice through your proposal. So those are just like for grants and funding, and I thought I would touch on media and pitching to outside outlets a little bit. So kind of similar to grants, it's like you want to research the media outlets that you're interested in getting on and kind of seeing what they already write about. Look at the writers who are writing about specific things, and they are looking at so many pitches on a regular basis that if it's not relevant to them, they're just going to ignore it. So if there's a writer who only writes about authors who have new books out and you pitch them an art exhibition, they're just going to toss it. So really thinking about going for the folks who have written about things kind of similar to what you're doing or would be interested in just based on like who they are and like maybe their social media presence. I also think about reaching out to like assistant editors, younger writers, up and coming. I think like getting that information and getting it in front of them and giving them an opportunity to be part of the conversation rather than going for like the main editor, who is also like getting pitched all the time, etc., and is maybe not doing things as carefully. So just a little bit, but we can talk more. How are we doing on time? Good. We're at 10:51. Amazing. Okay. So now we can just have a conversation, and maybe for the folks who, if you got to look over the other sheet and if you have questions, but we're really just open for conversation now. So.
I have a,
Yeah.
So, parsing opportunity, right? So, pitching one thing, parsing a whole other thing, right? And this is, can you guys hear me? Sorry, I'll be quiet. So, parsing opportunity. So, in addition to pitching, how would you decide what to take on and what not to take on? And how to deal with that? Like it's sort of an opposite angle. Yeah. But becomes a huge problem.
So like when folks reach out to you.
So yeah, And so when folks reach out to you and there's all this opportunity, you can't do it all.
Yeah.
But you can figure out what makes sense. And I'll say this saying, I'm coming off of what I call a your yes.
Yeah.
So I just said yes to everything, right? So pulling back now.
Yeah.
It's like,
So what I would recommend is like doing a gut check and just kind of, if your initial reaction is I'm already at my max, and yeah, so, or if you are like, oh, I've already said yes to 3 things, I want to really take on this 4th thing, but thinking about you're going to have to, like, what's the tipping point for you, thinking about like your hours, but I would also look at timelines. So if someone reaches out to you now about a project in April 2018, it's really easy to say yes, right? Because it's so far away. So think about would you do this if someone gave the opportunity and the deadline was next week?
Yeah.
You know, I think just thinking about immediacy, because it comes so much sooner than you think it will. So parsing opportunity, I mean, I really think what I do is I print out physical calendars for the next 4 months. Yeah, a year chart. So yeah, so you're preparing. So do you feel, I mean, like, so what do you think is like the core problem? That you want to say yes, but you can't?
That I should say yes, I still shouldn't say yes.
Yeah. I think should is just like,
Yeah, I know.
because I think it's more about like what you actually want. Because if you can give your 100% to a project and you want to do that, then you'll probably produce better work than if you say, you think I should say yes, and then you end up giving, you know, like 40%.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the other thing is thinking about if you can't do it now, but can you do it a year from now?
Well, and that's part of the question, right? Even just thinking of whatever people say. So yeah, like putting people off and doing it well. Yeah.
Has anyone here done that?
Yeah, I actually was putting together a project for came out of the Eyebeam proposal, and wanted to take on both an online presence and offline presence, and decided that it was just too much, and decided that let's focus on wanting to do it really well, but know that the other piece can still exist just later.
Right.
And it's actually opened up other opportunities for me to realize this can actually now be used to pitch for funding.
Funding for.
Yeah.
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 I feel like when pitching to investors in the tech industry, there's often like this understanding that there could be a return of investment. Do you have any tips for like pitching in the art world, and for example, working on a documentary where we can guarantee there will be no profit for private investors? So yeah, ways of creating like perceived value.
So for the art world, I think, are you pitching to like for-profit institutions or not?
I think at this point we're more interested in private investors. So pitching to like
So what I would say, I mean, from a marketing angle, whenever there isn't like a profit margin, so thinking about marketing deliverables, so it's like, where would you feel comfortable including, like mentioning them? So not logo placement, but like, you know, can they, you know, like acknowledge, I mean, but if you are comfortable with logo placement, you know what I mean? So thinking about on your website, on your social media, can you tag them on newsletters? Thinking about, you know, producer credits. If you have an event for the launch of your documentary, can they do opening remarks? So thinking about how you can include them, and then they also feel like they're part of this. I think when for-profit institutions and investors are giving funds to nonprofits and also projects that don't have an ROI in terms of revenue, what they're looking for is to look good, you know, and they're like, look at all the people that we're helping. And so thinking about museums, for example, when they have, so Tiffany's was a sponsor for the biennial, you know, they had logo placement everywhere. They got an exclusive like video contract with T-Brand Studios where they produce content around the biennial, you know, so I think you can also think about what are the exclusive things that you can give to them that you won't give to other investors. The other thing I actually thought of was OpDocs for the New York Times. They accept pitches. So if you're looking for funding for something, you should reach out to them. I only recently found out that it's open to everyone. So I think that's really helpful. But really for private investors, think about your audience and just kind of why they would want to reach your audience and how they can be, and also if you feel comfortable asking them for investment, think about, are you comfortable having a presence physically there with your community and with your network? Like you know, would you, yeah, would you feel comfortable with that? So I would say whenever there isn't like a physical, like a monetary value, there's definitely other values that they want. So, yeah. And also like media, you're doing interviews, etc. And if you say, you know, it's like, I wouldn't promise this ever or bring it up because it's so, like, there's no guarantee, but I think also, like, for press releases, etc., or even, like, in press documents saying that, oh, this was produced by this investor, and including them, that's probably where.
Sometimes, you know, I'm in this mode where I'm just, like, super busy, and then, like, some residency or grant opportunity comes through my email or something, and I'm like, there's no way I actually have the time to seriously tackle this thing, but I could spend the next like hour and a half just like banging that out,
yeah,
and then sending it in. And I have been doing that without success. But I'm curious, is that like harmful? You know, just not getting.
I don't think so, because I think, you know, we were talking about that folks apply year after year, and I think it's really just about getting the process started.
Yeah.
So it's not about, I don't think it makes them feel like, oh, this person doesn't care, but I think it's more just like even trying. So yeah, I don't think it's harmful, because I also know who have applied for outside, you know, outside of Yale and outside of residencies, like for opportunities year after year, and they don't get it until the third year, you know? So I think maybe it's just kind of like getting over the hump, like doing it, and then the next year knowing that, yeah, you know, it's like once you do it, then you're like, okay, a year from now, they will probably have another opportunity around the same time, so I can prepare, and it's not going to be an hour and a half process. So, yeah, I wouldn't worry about it. I would just apply. Hi.
I want to say there's maybe two sides to that. In one sense, like I've heard you should totally apply to everything because it's good for like visibility.
Yeah.
People see that and they might like hear you and something else or something, so it's always good to like be seen. But at the same time, I feel like I guess for some residency applicants or something, like if you were to apply excessively and without applying yourself too much, then they might start like they would recognize.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, yeah. No, that's so true. I think it's really just, yeah, you're so right. I think, yeah, we should clarify that it's like, the first time it's okay to do that, but if you do it repeat, you know, it's like, it's not like the same residency that you would do that repeatedly. You know, it's like, once you apply, the next year you have to submit a thoughtful, you know, like, application because you already know the deadline, etc. You know, so I think it's yeah, no, totally. So, yeah. I mean, it's more just like if it's the first time and you're like, oh, I didn't know this is happening, let me just apply, but then next year, yeah, you only have like one chance of that. Anything else?
I have a question.
Yeah.
In terms of the statement thing. So, as like a lot of us over here, like when we go into different
Yeah. I have this question every time.
it's like voice, and they're like, which has to like, it's like, it's so like, you cannot use it, but then you have to read like a proposal for something to get money and then write in that context. But when that context has to fit your website.
Yeah.
That's the thing that's really like hard. Where like, for example, I work as an artist, educator, and journalist.
Yeah.
And all three things are things I care about.
Yeah.
But then when you're proposing for something, it's like, oh, but right now my educator hat on.
Yeah.
So should I change my website for that makes sense.
Yeah. So I think for websites, I wouldn't do that, but what I would do is definitely have sections for each one. So if you already articulated the 3 sections, so having like, you know, just kind of a page for each is really helpful. And also in your bio, you can include that. Those are the 3 things that you're interested in. And then kind of, I mean, one thing about a website is great is that you can keep it updated. So if you want to say, for the next 6 months, I'm working, you know, as an educator on these projects, you know, so then people know kind of like your current state, but then you're still open for other opportunities. But yeah, I get this question every time because I think everyone has so many things that they're working on, and I think it's really hard to juggle all of these like identities. So yeah, so I would say you don't have to like, you know, completely shift, but definitely keep it posted and have maybe like a couple of lines for each so that they know just kind of like where you are with each part of yourself.
Do you experience that with social media?
Well, social media, I just
For the same reason, like not knowing how to get
I find it really fun. The only time I have to engage is if I have like a project coming out, like a piece or a project. It's like, there's a thing like it. No context.
Sorry to check my phone. I just have to go back to work. But thank you all for coming. And as I mentioned, anyone who has questions, we can chat later. And then if anyone, you know, just wants clarity on, there's like a camera in my face, so apologies. But no, it's okay. So if anyone wants clarity on any of the particular one sheets, we can chat about it later. You know, always open to have a phone call. Thank you very much. Yeah. Oh my God.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Yeah,